Our topic is Nisyonos. Why, for heaven's sake? Why does a person come down to this world and then struggle? That's what Rabbi Gurary is going to address.
This question, why are we here, is one of the most common questions that in Hasidus, this question is asked over and over, and not only is it asked over and over, but when Hasidus takes any topic, if it's a Pesach, if it's Shavuos, if it's Sukkot, almost any topic, it starts with some questions about the Yontif, and then it says, to understand this, we first have to understand why did we come on this world. And if you don't have an answer to this question, you're not going to understand what's Pesach, what's Shavuos, what's Sukkot. Everything evolves on this question. What are we doing here? When before we came down on this world, we were in Gan Eden. Every one of us were in Gan Eden. And this world is for sure far from Gan Eden. As a matter of fact, this is the lowest world, the lowest spiritual world that we could imagine. So we came from Gan Eden, and our neshama comes down all the way in the physical world, in a physical body, and it doesn't make any sense. Why in the world did we come down from such a great place? And we have to ask this question. If you didn't even have the question, we have to ask this question every day. Because in order to know where we're going, we first have to remember where we're coming from. I remember I had a student who originally he was a hippie and a radical, and he was actually made a revolution in Houston, Texas, and they kicked him out. And he got interested eventually in Yiddishkeit. And he said that the first thing that really made him think about who he is he had a professor who wasn't even Jewish, but told him that before you want to know where you're going, you have to know where you're coming from. And that opened up his whole way of thinking, and he started looking into himself. So this is something that everyone understands, that in order to know where you're going, you really have to know where you're coming from. So every day, believe it or not, we say it, but maybe we say it so quick that we don't even listen to the words we say. But every day we start the brachos in the morning, and we start Elokai, Neshama shenasata bi, the neshama that you placed in me, originally Tahoirahi. You remember that? Does that sound familiar? Tahoirahi is explained in Hasidus. Tahoira here doesn't mean pure, clean from tumah, because up there the neshama is much higher than not to be tamei. But Tahoira means that's the highest world, which is called in Hasidus, in Kabbalah, it's the world of Atzilus. The world, Atzilus, comes from the word close, Eitzel. The neshama came from the highest level. And then we say, you brought it down to Ata Barasa, to the world of Bria, Ata Yitzarta, then it came down to Yitzira, and finally, Ata Nefachta bi, you blew it into my body. So we start off every day saying we didn't start here. We existed before the world existed. We came from Atzilus. Why do we say this every day? Again, because if we're not going to remember where we came from, then we might think this is a paradise, and we got to realize that there's a very big question. What am I doing here? I come from such a beautiful place. Then what am I doing here? So this question is perhaps one of the most important questions that we have to ask ourselves, remind ourselves where we come from, and find a good enough answer that it pays to come down here, that we will get even closer to Hashem than we were when we were on this highest lofty level of Atzilus. Just like a businessman invests money in a business not to come back with Baruch Hashem, I got my money out. That's no kind of a business. The whole idea of investing is to come out with a profit. So if we already started from such a beautiful, holy place, it has to be that what we're going to get out of coming down in this world, the profits are going to be so great, even more than where we started off before we even came down on this world. So I'm going to talk about that soon, but first I want to speak specifically about the word Nisyonos. Nisyonos literally means tests. We all have tests in this world. We come into situations that really, as if God is testing us. Every person has all kinds of issues and problems. Life is not always a bowl of cherries. We have challenges, and in the words of the Torah, it's called Nisyonos, Nisayon. Why does God need to test us? What's the question? Hashem knows us. He doesn't have to test us to get to know who we really are. It's obvious that Hashem knows us before the test. He knows us just as much as after the test. There's nothing that God gets clarification by, we passed the test. He knows us through and through. And He also knows what we're going to choose. So then what is the purpose of Hashem testing us? And this goes back to the first Yid, Avraham Avinu, when Chazal tell us that Avraham Avinu was tested 10 times. And the last test was the Akedah, when Hashem said to Avraham, take your son. And he was tested if he was going to do it. So the question that is asked by many Mefarshei HaTorah, what is the purpose of Hashem testing us? If you look into the Torah, the question becomes even stronger. Because there's a pasuk in the Chumash where it says, Ki minaseh Hashem Elokeichem, Hashem tests us, lodas. Literally, lodas means to know. Hashem is testing us to know, are you going to listen to Hashem? So it almost seems like that it says in the Torah that Hashem tests us in order for Him to know. He knows already. He knows us, and He knows also what we're going to do. So why do we have to go through the test? So one of the famous answers is the Ramban. Ramban, we know there's the Rambam, and there is the Ramban. Rav Moshe ben Maimon is the Rambam. Rav Moshe ben Rav Nachman is the Ramban. Nachmanides in English. The Ramban says that Hashem Taka knows everything we're going to do ahead of time. He knows us through and through. We don't even have to do it. But the Eibishter loves us so dearly that He wants to reward us, not just because who we are, but what we do. In other words, once we pass the test, it's one thing you are the type of person that would pass the test. But there's another thing is actually passing the test. Going through it, then the reward is much greater. So the Ramban says that the reason that Hashem tests us is in order to give us a greater reward, that we actually went through the test, and you deserve much more credit than you would be a person that you would pass the test. It's called, there is bikoyach, what you would do bikoyach, or what you do bipoil, what you do in action. For instance, every Yid would be ready to give up his life al Kiddush Hashem. Every Yid is ready to do that. But those who actually did it, who actually gave up their life, are a much higher madrega than all Jews who would be willing to do it. Why? Because Yidden, like the Kedoshim and other Yidden, who actually gave up their lives, there is something special about doing it, not just being willing to do it. So this is how the Ramban answers why Hashem tests us. Nothing about Him, it's all about His kindness, that we should be rewarded for doing it b'poil. But we still have a problem. The pasuk says something else. The pasuk seems to imply that the test is ladas. Ladas, it sounds like in order for Hashem to know. So what the Ramban is saying is very beautiful, but in pasuk it says ladas, which seems like Hashem needs to know, and the test is going to clarify, and He's going to find out. So we're back to square one. What does it mean that God needs to know? What doesn't He know, and what is He going to find out? So there's a beautiful answer given in Hasidus that the ladas that it says in the Torah is not on God. It's on the Yid. That a Yid who is going to pass a test is going to have a deeper das in God. He's going to reach a deeper realization of God. So again, according to this, which I'll soon explain, according to this explanation, it's still not for Hashem. Hashem knows before, He doesn't need, you don't have to go through it for Him to know. But you need it, because you will get closer to Hashem. You will have a different appreciation of Hashem when you pass a test. And let me try to explain this, and this could be very helpful to all of us.
But can I ask a question?
Sure.
Why did Hashem make it that a person would come close to Hashem through difficulties when He could have made it that we should come close through appreciating what He gave us?
Okay, so that is a very good question, but that is another question which is a general question. Why do we have to work and have a Yetzer Hara and overcome the Yetzer Hara? If He wants us to do the right thing, He could have given us just a Yetzer Tov, and we'll do everything He wants us to do. If He wants us, that's what He wants us to do. He wants us to do, so why is He giving us a Yetzer Hara? Why do we have to work? It should be easy. So obviously the answer to that question, and will be the answer here, that a part of God's kindness is He wants us to know that we earned it. When a person gets rewarded for nothing, you don't appreciate it as much as if you know that I earned it. I did something to get this. Hashem set up a system that every time He gives us something, it's because you should know that you earned it. It sits better with you when somebody hands you a check of $1 million, someone who, let's say, doesn't even know you, and suddenly says, here, you could use this. Please be my guest. You would feel very uncomfortable. Why are you giving it to me? I didn't do anything, and you don't even know me. So a part of Hashem's kindness, He loves us so much that He wants us to have everything and at the same time know that it was our effort that caused it. So it'll sit much better with the person.
But Hashem is the one who created our nature to be that way, so He could have created our nature to be different.
Okay, you're asking very good questions. The deeper answer to that is that we need to be a keli. In order to internalize Hashem's gifts, we need to be a keli pnimi, that it should fit in. In Kedusha, in general, to attain any connection to Kedusha, you need avodah. Klippus is for free. We see in the Torah, when the Yidden complained that they want to have basa, so it says the Lashon, they complained, why can't we go back to Mitzrayim? We had it chinam. We had it for free. So Hasidus makes the whole, that's exactly the point. If it's not Kedusha, impurity, you don't have to work for, you get as much as you want. No problem. But Kedusha, to have an intimate connection to Hashem, you have to be worthy. You have to make a keli. So in other words, if we didn't have to work for it, we didn't give up something, we didn't work on it, Kedusha really cannot stick with you. Because Kedusha needs a keli. You have to be worthy in order to have this intimate relation. You don't have an intimate relation to a stranger. It's not going to work. So you have to have something in you to establish that connection. So the Eibishter made that you have to work. Not just, like I said, on the first glance, that'll be a greater reward because I feel better. It's much deeper than that. Kedusha you cannot get for free. It's not possible to attain any level of Kedusha without being worthy, without making a keli to Hashem. And that's the test. The test is really, what do you want? Do you want to feel you really need it? You really want it? Or you really have a connection? Or God is so kind, He doesn't mind if I'm here. Let me give you an example. Imagine if you would chas v'shalom think you have everything you want, nachas from children, and a home, and a husband, and all your dreams. But if you were to know that the only reason you have all that is because God is so kind, He doesn't mind. There's so many mosquitoes and there's so many cockroaches. They have whatever they have. You could have also what you have. You really, Hashem doesn't need you, doesn't care for you. Whatever you do, you could stand on your head and spit nickels. But He's so kind, He doesn't mind if you're there too. What kind of relationship is that? You would feel, Hashem doesn't need me. You would feel like, you don't know what you would feel. It would be the worst feeling. That is really the difference between a Yid and Lahavdil a Goy. A Goy could have everything, he could labor talk, he could have wealth, and he could have condominiums, he could have a yacht, he could have everything in the world. And this poor Yid comes, he has money to go to the grocery. And he's happy. And the Yid Nebuch is struggling all his life. The answer is, but what kind of relationship does he have with Hashem? This guy could be having all that because God is so erech hapayim, He's so kind, and He could hold in His anger. He could give to 26 generations. You know, on Shabbos we say the kapitel with the 26 times Kili Yolam Chazdai. So why do we say 26 times Kili Yolam Chazdai? So the Gemara says that there were 26 generations. That the only reason that they existed is because God is so kind that He didn't mind. Let them be too. So you could have everything you want. That doesn't mean that you're wanted. That doesn't mean that you're needed. On the contrary. You remember the story of Purim. Achashverosh made a banquet. And he invited everybody from the town. The sanitation department and the unions. Everybody had the best food on the best china and the best wine and the best. But what was the point of this party? The king is happy and he's, I'll make a splash. Everybody is invited. Does the king know anybody? Does he care if you came, if you didn't come, if you slipped on a banana peel? You have no value whatsoever. But that's the point. The king is throwing a party for everybody. Now, a person who has no sensitivity, has no refinement, he says, I'm going to that party. Are you kidding? You know what the menu is there? Do you know what the dishes are? You know what the waiters, the champagne? I'm there. But a sensitive, refined person says, Meshiger, I'm going to a party, no one knows me, the king doesn't know me, he just doesn't mind. Another guy, anybody. Who wants to go to such a party that you're not needed, you're not wanted, you're not noticed, nothing? You're just here because the king is throwing a party. Everybody's welcome. It's like going to a chasana. Chas v'shalom should be like that. But if going to a chasana, you aren't invited, and no one knows you. You don't know who the chassan is or the kal is. But it's a free-for-all party. Everybody's welcome. So a sensitive person wouldn't go to such a chasana. I'm going to go to a chasana. No one knows me, not the chassan, not the kala. It's just free food. That is the difference, Bechlal, between our relationship with Hashem. Everything that we get from Hashem, this is because we have a special connection to Hashem. So it doesn't even matter what the serving, if it's tam-tam crackers. But the king wants me, and he invited me because he wants to be with me. So getting back to what we started talking. So Kedusha, you have to be a Keli. Because Kedusha is an intimate relationship, then it has to be that there is a connection. Right?
Keli, you mean a Vaida? What do you mean by Keli?
Keli means you got to be a vessel. It got to fit. There got to be a match.
By being a Keli is by doing a Vaida?
Right. When we refine ourselves, we become a Keli that Kedusha could shine in us. And here's where I left off. When a person has to overcome a problem, you have to dig deeper into yourself to find the koiches to overcome that. When you suddenly get to that, you get to know yourself better. You didn't even know that you have these koiches. Because the way it works, this is how the system that when you don't need it, you don't use it. So a person could have tremendous koiches, but he didn't even know that he had that. When a person has a test, in order to overcome this test, you have to dig deeper into yourself to find hidden koiches that you wouldn't even know you have. So ladas means you get to know who you are, and therefore, once you reveal your deeper koiches in you, you have a deeper das in Hashem. So this is a very interesting answer. That the reason we come down on this world and we have tests is to have a deeper connection to Hashem than we had when we were upstairs. That means that a Yid coming down on this world, because he has tests and he has to dig in deeper, he suddenly becomes deeper connected to Hashem than he was when he was up there, Neshama in Gan Eden.
I always thought we came here so we could get into Gan Eden. I thought we came here to fix something that's missing.
Let me clarify a few things. Everything is true. You said every day before tonight, I think you probably said it this morning, when you said this morning, Elokai Neshama Shenasata Bi, in past, Tehoirahi. How did you...
I thought it meant every Yid Neshama comes takas kisei akavod.
Whatever that means, I hope you won't mind me saying this.
I need to understand.
You don't have even a clue what the word kisei hakavod means.
Of course not.
If you would know, you would know that kisei hakavod doesn't mean a throne. Kisei hakavod is a certain madrega, a certain awareness of Hashem. And that is called in Chinese Gan Eden. So in other words, what we say every day, every Jew on Yom Kippur, and Rosh Hashanah, and a Tuesday and a Wednesday, that we originally came from the highest level called Atzilus.
Every single Yid? That's
every single Yid, the lowest farmer, peasant, Sheni Dei Elishul. His neshama began before
Wait,
there was...
Is in Atzilus?
before the world was created. You mean before the world was created?
Get Yantif.
Not after the world was
Before the world. Because I'll tell you...
Now I understand.
Let me prove that.
First...
Listen, very interesting. After you said Tehoirahi, listen very carefully, because this is very interesting. You say the neshama that you put in me, she was Tehoira. Yeah?
It means originally.
Yeah. What's the next word? Atabarasa. That means that we're saying that the neshama existed before the Bria. After the neshama came originally from the world of Tahira, you first created, which is going on Olam HaBria. So we came way before the world existed. We were always here. And where were we? In Gan Eden. So I need to clarify something. That Gan Eden is a very general word. There are many, many levels in Gan Eden. So the Gan Eden that we were before we came down is still not the kind of Gan Eden we're going to have in the future. So it's not a contradiction, not the same Gan Eden. There's infinite levels in Gan Eden. Let's get back to the ranch. So the idea of a test is for our own good, in order to bring out who we are, in order to have a deeper connection to Hashem. You need to have challenges. And these challenges make you stronger. And you bring out koiches that not only you didn't know, even when you are Lamaila, when you are still in Gan Eden, you didn't necessarily use those koiches. When you come down on this physical world and you have all kinds of Nisyonos, this is all planned for your good, because you're going to have a new identity. You're going to discover who you really are and what you could do with it. So that's why Hashem tests us. Now, I didn't even begin to scratch the surface yet. But let me first bring out the main points, and then we'll go into detail. What I understood from the Rebbe when she called me, that people want to know, a lot of people have great difficulties in this world. Every person has a pekel. This pekel, jene pekel. Is it really worth it? What are we doing? So many people have such a hard life. Is it worth it to go through life and have so much difficulties? How do you cope with it? So I believe there are two answers. One answer that we just spoke about, that these difficulties is really in the long run for your own good. And that is because you are going to become a much stronger, deeper person and have a deeper connection to Hashem, and somehow that's worth it. You couldn't even have that connection up in heaven. There's no struggles there. So you didn't have to work hard. So you didn't have to dig deeper into yourself. So that's one answer. But then I have another answer, which I hope that this will come in handy for the rest of your life. And that is, we first have to examine what is life. The human nature is that we look at ourselves, we're all about ourselves. Me, me, me. If it's good for me, if it's not good for me, is it a struggle for me? We look at life, we picture life, what is it for me? And if a person, chas v'shalom, has a difficult life, then is it worth it? The problem is that we are not looking at ourselves and on life with the proper eyes. We gotta understand that basic Yiddishkeit. We are not here for ourselves. That is basic Judaism. The Gemara uses these 4 words. Ani nivresi l'shamesh eskaini. I am here to serve my master. And it's interesting to note that in the Gemara, these same words, there's 2 guesses, there's 2 versions of what the Gemara wrote. Does it say, I am here to serve my master? And there's a sharper guesser, I wasn't created only to serve my master. The only reason we're here is for the boss. Not about you. It's not about life. I want to enjoy life. And if I don't enjoy life and life is miserable, then it's no life. That's not a Jew. A Jew is not here to be happy or to be sad or to have, to be, to... There's a bigger picture. There's a bigger picture. The picture is there is God. And He created us for Him. That's life. We have certain things that Hashem wants from us. Why He wants is irrelevant. But one thing, the foundation of a Jew, is why do I do a mitzvah? because I want to go to Gan Eden, then you're serving yourself, you're not serving God. Are you here on this world to make sure that you don't toast in a microwave oven? That's, again, you're thinking about yourself. You're serving yourself. You got the wrong religion. That's not the Jewish religion. The Jewish religion is 101. The first aleph of Yiddishkeit is, I am here for God. Of course, if I do for God, God's going to pay me. What am I here for? What's life? Life is, I am here. The only reason I'm here is because God needs me and He wants me. And every time we come down on this world, every Yid does mitzvahs. And those mitzvahs brings God infinite pleasure. We can't even understand how much pleasure God Himself gets from even one mitzvah that we do. If you look at life, that life is not measured, do I enjoy myself, I have difficulties, I have this, I have that. Of course, we should hope and want to be gesund and stark, and everything should go good on every level. And God should give us all that. But that's still not what we're here for. Are we here just to have a good life? It's nothing at all with that. It's not only that. It's not at all what life is. The reason we're here is not to be happy and to be gesund and to have a good time in nachas. That's all good and fine. But that's not why we're here. God hired us. We're hired personnel. God hired us. He wants to build a condominium and He wants to move in. This world is Hashem's condominium. And He needs workers. He needs carpenters and plumbers and electricians. We are the ones who are building up God's condominium in order for Him to move in. Now the workers are going to be paid. But did the guy who hired these workers, did he hire them because he wants to be an employment agency? He wants to pay people. He wants the house and he wants to move in. And the workers are here to serve that need. So what I want to say is, every Yid, throughout your lifetime, you caused many, many times, you caused God Himself delight. You can't do this anywhere else. Up in heaven, you could be in Gan Eden, tanning in Gan Eden. You're not doing anything for Hashem. It's you. This world is the only place where what you do makes a difference. You cause God an infinite delight. Is there anything more that you could think of, anything greater than causing God a delight? When you go to Gan Eden, you're going to have delight. Now, while we're here, we make Hashem a delight. If you look at life that way, then of course it's not just it's worthwhile living. Every moment of life, no matter how difficult life is, compared to what I could accomplish, that I could give God Himself a delight, then life is a whole different world. That's how you could cope. When people Nishtugedach goes through so much, how do you cope with life? It depends how you look at life. If life is just what we think it is, then if we don't have that, it's a miserable life. But if you look at life the way God looks at life, what does the Mishnah say in Pirkei Avos? One moment of life on this world is more than all the rewards in Gan Eden, Olam Haba. Why? One of the explanations is because only here can you cause God a delight. Gan Eden is you are going to have delight. What is more important, or what kind of a comparison is God having delight or you having delight? So life, if we have a different mindset of what life is all about, we have enough to be happy and grateful that could keep a person happy. If he only thinks a little bit, what does Torah tell us of what this life has to offer. The most important thing is God. That's the whole religion. It's all about God, not about you. So we have to reevaluate. What is the mission? What am I doing here? If you think that life is, many parents have this bubbermeiser that I hear this all the time. I just want my child to be happy. As if that the tachlis of everything is he should be happy. Nothing wrong with being happy, but that's all you want is he should be happy? Isn't life is more about than you being happy? Question is, do you make God happy? That's why you came down. You didn't come down for you to be happy. We're here for God. There's a book that was published. I'm sure you know this better than me. There was a book about a certain rabbi, and the name of the book is All for the Boss. So we gotta remember every moment of life. It's about the boss. I gotta ask myself every night, is the boss happy with me? Not am I happy with this day? What did I accomplish? You gotta ask, what did God get out of this day? I'm here for Him. He put me down here for Him. Is He happy? I tell the story, and I'm sure I said the story here once before. There's a tremendous story. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe recorded thousands of stories. And he said about the story that I'm going to tell, that this story had the greatest impact on him. What was the story? I'll make it very short. A chassid of the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya. And if it was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, he was a pretty special man. And he walked into the Alter Rebbe, and he handed him a kvittel. I'm sure we know what a kvittel is. You go into a Rebbe, you give him a note of what you're asking. You need a bracha for this, you need a bracha for that. So this chassid walked into the Alter Rebbe, and he had a lot of needs. His wife wasn't feeling so well, and his horse and buggy broke down. He had a whole bunch of things. And he's waiting. The Alter Rebbe any second now is going to give him a bracha on all these requests that he had. The Alter Rebbe, after reading this settle, lifts up his holy eyes and looks straight in the eyes of the chassid. And he says the following: on this settle, I only see what you need. But what God needs you for, I don't even see on this settle. And the chassid fainted, and they had to carry him out. Why did he faint? The Alter Rebbe revealed to him that you're thinking about yourself. Everything about the settle is what you need. But there's not a mention, am I fulfilling God's needs? What about His needs? We're so carried, even if a person wants to be an Elachayit, and let's say he's writing, I want to be an Elachayit, give me a bracha. The question is, why do you want to be an Elachayit? You want to be an Elachayit because you want to feel good about yourself that you're an Elachayit? Then you're serving yourself again. You're not serving God. Do you want to be an Elachayit because that's what Hashem needs from you? Oh, that's a whole different story. This is what the chassid fainted. He realized that for so many years, he's missing the boat. He is a special man, he's learning, he's davening, he's doing mitzvahs, but he's doing it all for self-serving. He wants to have a good conscience about himself, that he is doing the right thing. That's not the religion. You got the wrong religion. The issue is not, am I a good person? I'm a chushavid, I'm a chusid, I'm a this. That's basically called avodah zarah. Avodah zarah doesn't have to mean that you bow down to a mummy, if you bow down to yourself and everything is about you, then you're not thinking about Hashem, you're thinking about you. That's why he fainted, because he realized, Alter Rebbe spoke something very deep to him. You're living a life, pious life, but you're not doing it because you feel that this is what Hashem wants. You want to feel good about yourself, your needs. So what are we talking about? The way to overcome all difficulties in life is to look at life in a whole different light. Life is not about yourself altogether. There's a mission. We have a mission. There's 100%, it's all about a mission. You're here in a certain place at a certain time in a certain city. Everything about it is you have a mission. It's all about God's mission. And you're doing that mission. And you're doing every day a Yid does. The Gemara says that a Yid, even Rachmana litzlan, a Rasha, it's full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate. It's full of seeds. Every Yid is like a pomegranate. If he knows it or not, he has full of mitzvahs. And if you do a mitzvah, you're bringing God, who is infinite, an infinite delight. Let me give you an example. Listen to this. The Baal Shem Tov said that if a Yid lives for 70, 80 years, and if even once in his life he did a tova for another Jew, one time, it paid for him to be here for 70, 80 years. You know how powerful this is? Why? Because to Hashem, when you do a favor for another Jew, which you can't do up there, no one needs your help up there. When you do a favor even one time your whole life, you already made you made you made the whole Hatzuras. It would pay it already. Why? Because if you once in your life helped another Yid with nothing, he needed a dime, he needed to buy me a Coke, bring me something, you helped another Yid. This gives Hashem infinite tainug. So you already made your whole trip. So you see, it's a whole different cheshbon. If you look at life, so big deal, I help him, but I have aches and I have pains and I have this problem, that problem. What are you telling me? I did a tayif. Well, how does that help me? Depends how you look at life. If you look at life about you, so I have aches and pains and I have tzuras and I have this and don't ask, my car broke down and I might have a leak in the house and I'm don't hack me in cup with that favor. The meantime I have so much problem. Wait a minute. Look at life. There's a bigger picture. It's not about you and your house. It's about Hashem. If the Baal Shem Tov could say to do once a Yid a favor, it pays for neshama to be here for 80 years. So don't you see that there's a whole different way of looking at life? If you don't look at life that it's about me and my needs, if we think always about Hashem, that's what the Alter Rebbe said to this chassid. You're so busy of what your needs. You're supposed to be asking me, what about Hashem's needs? And it's very interesting that in the olden days, when Hasidim would go into a Rebbe, one of the crucial things that they asked was, what's my mission in life? Not what I want and give me a brocha, I need a brocha. No. They first wanted to know. The Rebbe should tell them, because he knew what is the purpose that they came down on this world. And when the Rebbe would tell them a certain mitzvah, or a certain, they understood that that's the focus, what they're here for. So that's the first thing they wanted to know. What is my mission on this world? And I'm sure you heard the story. It's a famous story of was a chassid, Rabbi Yosef Balagala. The whole story. This was a Yid in the time of the Alter Rebbe. Was a Rav of a big city, a big Talmud, giant Talmud Chacham, and he already had a nice long white beard. He must have been already in the mid-60s. And he goes into the Alter Rebbe, a Rav from a big city like Chicago, but that was called Beshnikov, whatever. He's a ungesehener Ruf, mit a schöner, lange weißer Boot, mit a short dress like a bekuverdicke Ruf. He comes into the Alter Rebbe, to the Baal HaTanya, and he gets a surprise. The Alter Rebbe tells him, for the tova of your neshama, you ready for this? For the tova of your neshama, you have to become a balagala. You know what means a balagala? A balagala is less than a taxi driver. Because a balagala in those days was a guy who was, only thing he knows is to whip a horse. He was like an ignoramus who was a balagala. The Alter Rebbe is telling Aruf, nicht stam Aruf in a big city, in his midlife, like he's already 60 years old, and the Alter Rebbe is saying is, you know what you got to do? You have to give up your rabunis, and you have to become a taxi driver. Anyway, what happened with this man? Of course, he listened, and he became a balagala. He didn't know what in the world. He never could dream that he had to leave the city, because they would think he cracked. The roof became and he became a balagala, and years went by, and he was taking this guy to that guy, taking him from one city. One day, somebody who didn't even know who it was, he didn't even know if he was Jewish, was a psaganzer man who looked like a graf, and this graf hired him to take him to a very far place. Okay, that's what he was supposed to do. So he took him there. Meantime, it was such a far place, he had to stop off in an inn, a motel, stayed in a motel. This Rabbi Yosef, who now is a balagala, has to daven Ma'ariv. It's getting late, dark, and he starts davening Ma'ariv. And he was once a very... He davened Ma'ariv for hours, and he geweint, and he was thinking to Hashem, what in the world happened to him? He's a coach driver taking people from one place to another. What happened? Meantime, this guy who he took happened to be a Yid. Happened to be a Yid who was once a former Yid, and he was married and he had children. And he became totally frei. And he dropped his wife and children and married a shiksa. And he was so far gone in Yiddishkeit, like you can't imagine. When he heard Rabbi Yosef davening Ma'ariv with such a gewein mit azah, he started reminding himself, "Ey Gewalt, I'm a Jew. What did I do with myself?" Bottom line, I'm cutting the story very short. This man became a Baal Tshuva. And the Alter Rebbe, when he told this Rabbi Yosef to become a balagala, he saw that the way that Yene Yid is going to become Niskarev is by him going to become a balagala. And he's going to daven mind his own business in one room. In the meantime, this Yid is going to... And this Yid became not just a Baal Tshuva, but the second Alter Rebbe went already to heaven. The Mittler Rebbe, the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, that Rabbi Yosef brought this Yid to the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe wrote a whole sefer in Yiddish, how this Baal Tshuva should lead his life. Every day, how he should, because he had to do a lot of tshuva, he gave him a whole seder, how to lead a life of a Baal Tshuva. And he became a very special man. One day, this chassid, who now is going to see the Mittel Rebbe, the next Rebbe, the Mittel Rebbe says, last night my father came to me from heaven and he said, mission accomplished. Now you could go back to that city and become a Ruf once again. So what do you see from this story? The Alter Rebbe saw that this Yid, he didn't come down to be a Ruf. Maybe that was a side thing. His soul was here, destined to be Mekar of the Zahid. And that's why you came down. And if that's the case, you got to drop the Rabunis and become a Balagula. And they didn't even tell him why, when, why Balagula, when Balagula. The Alter Rebbe says Balagula is like the biggest insult. You take a love and says, you're going to be a taxi driver. And he listened. But the Alter Rebbe saw what's going to come out of this. But what am I bringing out? So in the olden days, a chassid, the first question in his life is not what I want. I'm doing this and this, I need a bruch. Wait a minute. First you got to know what you're doing here, Bechlal. And that's why they went to a Rebbe. They wanted to know, can you please tell me what's my mission on this world? So in conclusion, we have to start thinking about life in a different way. Life is nothing to do with me. I'm here for the boss. That's the real reason I'm here. So my question I have to ask myself is, am I doing what the boss wants me to do? And if I'm doing that, there's nothing greater. That it's worth life in the worst situations. Life is unbelievable. But if we forget that that's what we're here for, and we look at life about me, and what am I enjoying, and what's my comforts, then you have a good point. Life is not always a bowl of cherries. But we have to realize, what is the life of a Jew? What does the Torah tell us? What is the reason we're here?
So even David HaMelech had to ask Hashem, Hareinu Hashem Darkechem.
Right.
So what is life? Then you have Chaim. You have to open to Hashem that I shouldn't come upset and say, no, I didn't want you to do that. You're supposed to do that. So this is again...
We, Baruch Hashem, have a Shulchan Aruch. So 99% of the time, if I follow the Shulchan Aruch, I have a very clear picture of what Hashem wants from me. Now I have to realize what happens if I do what Hashem says. The Torah says, you give the Eibishter himself the greatest enjoyment. Nachas ruach she'amarti v'naseh b'tzayin. So basically, if I follow a life of the Torah, I'm not talking about your Gan Eden, we're not talking about Gehenna, that's all you. But basically the Torah is telling us that if you do what Hashem says, you're giving the Eibishter the greatest delight. There's nothing more that God could give than himself. There is no more. Gan Eden is small potatoes compared to this. It's nothing with nothing compared to that I could give God a tainum. And we all do that many times a day. So no matter what difficulties we should never have. The Eibishter Zagita and he gives us, but that's still not what life is all about.
So when a person went to Rabbi and asked what their tafkid is, so was that for Hashem or for their neshama, for themselves?
They were asking about Hashem. What does Hashem, I can explain this in this way. It says, the Arizal says that although every Yid has to keep all the mitzvahs, right? Shulchan Aruch doesn't say, but there are certain mitzvahs specifically that those mitzvahs is mainly why you came down. For instance, there is such a thing as Gilgulim. Every neshama has to fulfill all of the mitzvahs. But we don't do this. We somehow don't cover all the mitzvahs. So what happens? We have to come down again and make up for the mitzvahs we missed last time. But we don't know which mitzvahs did we miss. Only very few souls came down for the first time. The Alter Rebbe was told by the great Maggid that the Maggid heard this from the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov heard this from Achia Shaloini. And you know who Achia Shaloini was? He was Eliyahu Hanavi's Rebbe. Achia Shaloini was still from the Jews who left Mitzrayim. So Achia Shaloini was a very, very holy person, and he was the Rebbe of Eliyahu Hanavi. Achia Shaloini came down thousands of years later, and he came to teach the Baal Shem Tov for 10 years. The Baal Shem Tov's Rebbe was Achia Shalomi. When the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya, came from the Mezritcher Maggid the first time he went there, he went to the Maggid to become a chassid of the Maggid. When he came the first time to the Maggid told him, I have some information for you that I was told by Baal Shem Tov, who he heard is from Achia Shalomi. And he told him that you are a neshama chadasha, you are a neshama d'atzilis, you are a neshama of chachma d'atzilis. He told him exact address, Avenue H, corner. He told him exactly he is a neshama chadasha of chachma d'atzilis, and he came down on this world to teach a new kind of a chassidus, Toras Chabad. and he's going to have a lot of opposition, but he's going to overcome it all, and it's going to last till Mashiach. And then he said, but you cannot reveal this to anyone.
So how did that
Because one Rebbe told it to his son, who was the Rebbe. This was only handed down from one Rebbe to another, and the first time that we know about this is in Tafshin Zayin. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe said, I'm going to now reveal to you something that no one knew. And he said, I saw it with my own eyes. So there it says that he wasn't allowed to share this. Now this answers such an unbelievable... The Alter Rebbe had opposition not only from Misnagdim, he had also opposition from his colleagues, other Talmidei Amaget, who said, how could you do such a thing as take Hasidus and bring it down to logic? And he had opponents within his Chaverim. If the Alter Rebbe would say, listen here, the Maggid told me what the Baal Shem Tov said in the name of Achia Shaloni. Would there be one iota, would somebody say a peeps? The Alter Rebbe is not going to, they didn't think the Alter Rebbe is going to make up something. This is a message from upstairs, from Achia Shaloni. Are you kidding? There would no, but he was not allowed to spill the beans that he got this direction from Achia Shaloni.
What would happen if he spilled the beans?
Mashiach would probably be here, and it would be a whole... But this was not the time to reveal that.
Women are exempt from several mitzvahs.
We're not talking about...
No, well, but we're not... We don't have to be yotzi those mitzvahs, so is that counted
No, whatever you're not... You don't have to come down for mitzvahs that a woman is not obligated to do. And besides the point, you might find this interesting, that women really don't have to come down again. Gilgulim is really the men. The women only come down because their husband comes down, so they have to keep him company. But yeah.
I was told that the way a person can know a little bit of what their mission is what they pull to, or what their talents, their inside, their natias, what they pull to is basically
or what they have a hard time with.
A hard time, but also the things that they pull to, that they want to accomplish, is also leading them towards their mission.
I don't know, maybe that's...
I want to tell you something.
And then if there's an
I never heard that part.
Yeah.
If you heard, I can't, but I never heard that. I heard just the opposite, that the mitzvahs that we find most difficult is because the Yetzer Hara knows that this is the main reason you're here.
Right.
But one of the things that people went to a Rebbe is when the Rebbe would tell you this mitzvah you should do, you understood that what he's saying to you is that's one of the mitzvahs that you really came down for.
So now what is if there is a certain Nisoyan that keeps coming back, that I can't pass, and it comes in a million different coats, and it's it feels like an impossibility, but I could see it makes a circle.
I want to tell you something. There's no such a thing that it's impossible, because if God gives it to you,
and it's supposed to be possible,
then it is possible.
They have the
just hidden. It's just that it's difficult, whatever. But there's no such thing. God doesn't do anything in vain. If He made it difficult, it's because that's so important, and that because it's so important, the Yetzer Hara makes it so difficult. And obviously, the message is to overcome that.
Yeah, but when you accomplish that thing that is very hard for you, and you become second nature, then something else you have to work on, and then more, and once that you work on it.
As long as there is life, as long as there's life,
that's why it's going to keep coming to you.
You should know like this. I once heard,
something you have to work on to make it.
If you would accomplish everything that there is in life to accomplish, there's no need for you to hang out here. So then it's time to go elsewhere. So as long as we are alive, we have to believe, and this says, I'm not saying this on my own, we have actually allotted how many days, how many hours we have to accomplish what we need to accomplish. The Eibishter gives a person as many years as it takes. Let's say, if a person was destined that he has to keep 4,000 Shabbosim, I'm just picking a number. If that's what Hashem had in mind before you came down, your neshama needs 4,000 Shabbosim. then you're going to live, mitzvah Hashem, to have the ability to observe those 4. So there's a number. It's not a bingo card that you just cover it once. And there is also how many times does your neshama need to repeat that mitzvah. And as many times as you need to repeat that mitzvah, that's how many days and years you are allowed to live. So we can't say, I did Shabbos already, I did that already. If you have another Shabbos in your life, that means that Hashem needs your soul. You need that extra Shabbos. You need that Shabbos too. And I'll tell you something very, very interesting. There is a Gemara that says in the Gemara that if a person misses one mitzvah, I think it gives a mashal of tefillin. If you once was supposed to put on tefillin and you missed, the Gemara says something very strong. It is as if you never put on tefillin. So Hasidus tries to explain this. You put on tefillin all your life. You just one time missed, and then the Gemara says that it is as if you never wore tefillin. Why? So the explanation is, it's not only that Hashem wants you to put on tefillin. There was a certain number of times, how many times you had to repeat that tefillin. If you didn't meet that number, then you didn't. So if you live extra amount of years, that alone is the clear indication that your neshama needs to repeat that mitzvah as many times as you lived. So if you didn't meet that quota, then you didn't do it. Then you didn't get it. So it's a whole very important thing to learn, that it's not just we got to do mitzvahs. There is a shlichus of how many times your neshama has to repeat that mitzvah. So if a person lived his life but he missed one time, then he's missing that number.
But when you say repeat, you mean like perfecting it?
Not even perfecting
just
it.
Just doing it?
Even if it wasn't perfecting it. Every neshama has a mission of how many times do you need a hair shofar. Let's say you need to sit in a sukkah about a woman. How many times does her neshama need to light candles? Not just she needs to light candles. If God gives a person years, it's because He needs those years. He needs that many times. Every neshama has how many times they have to repeat that mitzvah. It's a very interesting concept.
It's interesting and scary because he didn't do it once. He has to come all over again.
What should I do? I would like to help you out. I'm just telling you what it says. But this is very interesting that Hashem, as many days as a person lives, this is the clear indication of that means that Hashem needs me to repeat that mitzvah this extra time. Why? We're not God. We don't know that.
So that answers that if it's an assignment that repeats, doesn't necessarily mean you're flat. You're going to have to do it again and again until you get it, but it means you may have to do it these many times.
That's many times you need to Nisyonos, right? That's a very good answer.
Let me ask you a different question. What happens, Leilani, somebody's going through a Nisyonos that they're unconscious, say?
Yeah.
If a person's here in this world because he needs to, he has a shlichus in this world.
So the answer is very simple. If Chas v'Shalom, he came to a situation, he didn't do it on himself. Hashem gave him this stroke or whatever. So that means that that's not what Hashem had for him, that he didn't need that day. If it's God who did it, if a person on his own,
no, but why is he still here?
He has you should know.
If a person
like this,
able to accomplish.
Okay, that's a very good question.
And maybe he's there for the other person who's going to have to care for him.
There it could be, but I want to say something very, very interesting. In the Torah, when a person chas v'shalom, Gemara gives an example. Let's say, God forbid, a house collapsed, an earthquake, and Rahman al-Islam, and a whole building fell on top of him. There's a din in the Torah that if long as that person is alive, even if the way he is, he's not going to live too long. You are obligated to be Machal Shabbos, Machal Yom Kippur, every mitzvah, to spare a person's 1 second more of life. Now, what kind of a quality of life does this person have when a building fell on top of him? An earthquake. He's under the rubbles, but if you know that he's alive, or even if you have a suffix, if he's a suffix alive, you're mechuyev to be, because life is so precious to Hashem that even our life, when you're under the rubbles, whatever you call it, the life on the neshama to be connected to a body is such a special thing. It has beiram, but life in general is also gewaldig for the neshama. For a neshama to be in touch with the body, because to make a long story short, because the only way that a neshama could be in touch with a body has to be connected to such a koyach that could put together two opposites. So when a neshama is in a body, even chas v'sholem when you're not doing any mitzvahs, you are already in a better place than when you are a soul without a body. And that is the reason why you should be Machalel Shabbos in anything, to save a person, to spare him, to live another second. What kind of quality of life is that? It's not, you can't even measure it. So he's not doing any mitzvahs. Obviously he's not doing any mitzvahs.
If he's a man and somebody's putting on film on him, he's...
okay, I don't know. There could be a question if he's not conscious, is that called tefillah? I'm just saying that there's something about life that a neshama, when it's connected to a body, it takes something greater, so great, just to connect the neshama with. In order for neshama and a body to be together, it's being connected to something even greater.
There are stories of people that were in subconscious state that
came back.
Came down to say that they did tshuva in those days.
Now, there is, I don't want to go into this, I don't know how much time I have. There is a Meiri, there's a Risha in a commentary that says a little bit of an answer, something like what you say. The Meiri says that the reason you should save a person's life, even if you know he's going to die in 10 minutes, so the Meiri says, because he could do tshuva that second. And tshuva could change his whole past. So that's why life is so valuable, because it doesn't, to do tshuva could take a second. It's a decision, a major decision that just takes a second to come to. For that person, if you could save his life, he could do tshuva that second, and then it's changing his whole past. But that's only the Meiri. Most Rishonim don't learn because he could do tshuva. Life, just for life alone.
Right. As long as we're alive, dead people can't praise Hashem with kol. So if we keep on praising, that means we're accepting, and that's
yes.
life.
But what I am trying to say, it does say in Hasidus that just the fact that a neshama connects to a body,
even if he's not praising Hashem.
Yes, that fact alone. Let's say, when a baby is born, baby can't do any mitzvahs. Just the fact that the neshama touches, connects to the body, and works in such harmony that there's no logic. The soul and body have nothing in common. One is godly, one is physical, and they work in such harmony. Only the Eibishter who could do the impossible gives that koyach that two opposites could become one. That means that this koyach of hamafli lasais, which we say every day in our sheyotza, hamafli lasais, he does wonders. So Chassidus says, you know what's these mafli lasais? That the soul and the body, when they connect, they work in such harmony, like it's unbelievable. That takes only God Himself. That most miraculous miracle. So soon as the soul touches the body, comes into a body, do you know that it says that soon as an neshama comes down in a body, already he gets olam haba? Mm-hmm. Yeah. According to one opinion, it says once it says it, as soon as it says amen. But one says even just the fact that it came down here, olam haba, we're talking about tchiyas amesim, not Gan Eden. That's just the fact that the soul connects to a body, already has a ticket to olam haba.
Yeah, but also the soul didn't want to come down to the world.
Okay, that's not a contradiction.
I'm just adding.
The soul is torn. On one hand, it doesn't want to come down in the body. It's on the other hand, what he could accomplish, he doesn't want to leave. That's why the Mishnah says, Bal kocha chatochai and Bal kocha chatames. The same neshama is torn. It doesn't like to be here, but the advantages of here is nowhere else. So it doesn't want to leave. Yeah.
That's why I heard one of the ways the neshama is coaxed into yes coming down because he doesn't want to. You're going to get the chance to bring light into this world 100 times by making a bracha. So he has 100 brachas a day, and he brought light in 100 brachas a day. Because I'm saying it's the amen, it's even one thing, but never made 100.
And now I'm saying that soon as the neshama comes down in the body, it already is ahead of the game. Because now, as soon as it's connected to the body, it's tapping into such a high force, because in order for the neshama body to be connected, that tapping into that koyach, it's worth it all. Just for that even.
Even without the amen.
Without even the amen. Before even the yom.
Even though he's forced.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with that. The fact is a fact.
Malchani said it was the first neshama that came down. His wife was also the first neshama.
I don't have no real information about this, but I could tell you that if it works that our husband and wife are two halves of the same soul, it's hard to believe that only half of the soul is a new soul. It got to be that it's a team.
You know, it's like the question is so gewaldig, but the answer, like, it's like...
I want to tell you final, very beautiful story. The Alter Rebbe overheard his Rebbetzin referring to her husband, and she called him Mine. That's all. Mine. Mine said, my did, mine. When he heard this word, Mine, he went into such a dveikis to Hashem. He says, I'm only hers with one mitzvah. With how many mitzvahs am I yours? 613. He blew his mind. The Alter Rebbe's mind. Mit wiffel bin ich deine. This is a moire dicke word. We don't realize a mitzvah means attachment to the Eibishter. Do you know that the Alter Rebbe in Tanya says that before we do a mitzvah, we make a bracha. And what do we say? Asher kiddishanu b'mitzvaysa. What's kiddishanu literally mean? You sanctified us, those ins geheiligt, right? Kiddishanu, lashon kedusha, yeah? Comes the Alter Rebbe in Tanya. He says kiddishanu means kiddushin, marriage, betrothal. When we do a mitzvah, we are married to you. Pretty good shidduch. I find a shidduch. When we do a mitzvah, we become one with you. That's the Taich kiddishanu. So the Alter Rebbe heard she called him Meine only through one mitzvah. Mit wiffel bin ich deine. So they want to be happy in life or not?
Thank you so much.
I get to knock and I get bench to you, and if we could, and I'm speaking to myself too, if I would remember this, I would be a happy person.